think we'll be fine, Rob. I had a look at that a minute ago with Councillor Dave there. It's looking good.
Okay, I'll be back very soon.
Cool. So if we're going to agree to any spending, do it now.
That's right.
No, because I'll tell him.
Dang.
You've got to be so careful of those deputies. Their blind loyalties to their chairs.
But what if it was for raising the wage?
It's a completely different matter.
Right, I have 2 o'clock on my watch. Narelle, are you happy?
Yes.
Wonderful. In which case I open the Hearings and Engagement Committee meeting for the 4th of November to hear Waiwere Drive speed limit reduction proposal. Some administrational things before we hear from our submitters. Apologies. I have an apology from Councillor Cash, who will be intermittent during the day due work commitments. I don't have any other apologies. Narelle, do you?
No, I have no further apologies.
All right. In which case, I will move the apologies, seconded by Councillor Donovan. All those in favour say aye. Those against, the ayes have it. The agenda is as published. Councillor Donovan will move. Councillor Wilson will second. All those in favour say aye. Those against, the ayes have it. Now, declarations of interest. I note Councillor Mark Donovan raised just a small issue at the beginning with me. Councillor Mark, I wonder if I could give you an opportunity just to put something on the record, and so Narelle can note that.
Yeah, so it was just around actually probably some of those things that now, having heard Megan speak, would be somewhat irrelevant, but it was just close contacts that are in that vicinity. In particular, one very close contact, i.e. ex-wife, but we are on mutually agreeable terms. So
Careful.
yeah, hopefully she's not watching. And then just the foodstuffs aspect of it. But I see no real conflict. I just wanted to make sure that it was tabled.
All right. Well, thank you for that. That's always best to be on the cautious side. So thank you.
Yeah.
So that really brings us to item 4, if I'm not mistaken, and we have Chris Allen and Robin Denton with us. So Robin, am I handing this over to you or to Chris?
Sorry, me, I'm expecting. So
wonderful, welcome.
Thank you.
Chris, you don't have to look so worried.
So just a quick overview for elected members before we hear from the submitters. So this is the ongoing process that we're working through, a special consultative procedure for consideration of lowering speed limit on a section of Waiwere Drive, that section being from Arthur Porter Drive through to Puketi, from the current 80 k's an hour down to 60 k's an hour. This has been brought about as a result of a consent condition and relates to the consent condition requiring traffic signals in at Kawera Place. The consultation process commenced just in amongst COVID delays that were announced basically the evening of the committee meeting. But we have worked around that with using different comm strategies to try and ensure that we've got good coverage out to the community and all affected parties. And we've completed the consultation requirements that the speed limits rule also requires. So there were two options for people to consider. Option one, which is to reduce the speed limit from 80 to 60, and option two, which was to retain it. We have had 781 submissions received, and 80% of those were against the proposal to lower the speed limit. So today we are considering the submissions, and then I'll be seeking direction for any items that elected members would like specifically covered in the deliberation and adoption report, which will be considered by the Infrastructure Ops Committee on the 7th of December.
Robin, thank you for that thorough and clear introduction. So thank you. I think we now are ready to hear from our first submitter, as long as my colleagues, if you have no questions of Robin. No, good. All right, so I think we have Narelle Bill McMaster.
Yes, I believe we have Bill in the meeting.
I do. Bill, lovely to see you. Hope
Sure,
things are well
Mr.
with
Chairman.
you.
Yes, very good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
That's good. We're in your hands, Bill. You've been allocated 10 minutes. It's always good to just refocus on your salient points to enable our committee members to ask questions that they may have. Bill, we're in your hands, sir.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Chairman, and your worship and councillors, and the NZEA. Thank you for the opportunity to submit and present to you on this proposal. Just very briefly before getting into it, I'd like to acknowledge and thank Your Worship Paula for opening the new AA Centre at Rototuna yesterday morning. It was a great occasion and a big milestone for the AA. Just by way of background, my name is Bill McMaster. I'm a councillor on the AA Waikato District Council, and one of the roles of the AA branches is to advocate on local and regional transport matters on behalf of the AA. So, turning to the proposal now, Mr. Chairman, if that's okay, I'll take our submission as read. I'll just confirm with you and councillors that overall we support option 2, as Robin has just read out, which is retain the speed limit at 80 kilometres an hour from Arthur Porter Drive to Puketi Road, and do not make any changes. Now, just in support of our submission, I just want to highlight 3 points, if I can, sir. The first one is the function of Wairere Drive. So as councillors will be very familiar, Wairere Drive, or the Ring Road, as we often call it, is a highly strategic road corridor for Hamilton. It functions as a strategic regional roading corridor and is the highest classified road in the One Network roading hierarchy. It was designed and built to move traffic around the city as quickly and efficiently as possible. Significant investment has been made in this corridor by Hamilton City Council, supported by Waka Kotahi, to develop this corridor as a major arterial for the city. And again, as councillors and staff will know, the Ring Road also forms a very important part of the wider regional transport network, and it's hugely important that we protect this investment. The Ring Road itself has been designed with limited access around the significant parts of its length. And so every new intersection or entrance onto this corridor lowers or degrades the efficiency of the corridor. And if we just take, for example, the Auckland motorway, we can see that that's a good example of how a corridor can get degraded by local rat running, the more entrances that you get onto a major corridor. As Robin mentioned in her intro to you, the stated reasons for reducing the speed on the Ring Road are related to the new land use on the corner of Karewa Place and Eagle Way. The AA questioned whether this land use reason justifies reducing the efficiency of one of the most significant roading corridors in the city. We suggest that possibly poor or unusual planning practices occurred whereby the RMA consent approval for foodstuffs has been granted prior to this process today of the Local Government Act, whereby Hamilton City Council as the road controlling authority must consult on lowering the speed limit to enable the land use condition to be actioned. So things do seem a little bit around the wrong way there. So just coming on to the second point I want to highlight, and that's safety in the Hamilton Speed Management Plan. The information that's been provided in the public arena clearly states that there's no safety reasons to lower the speed limit. Hamilton City Council have advised that the speed limit reduction is not in response to traffic crashes in this area. It's more related to the foodstuff proposal. Mega Maps, which Council will be well aware of, is the Waka Kotahi nationally recognised guide for road controlling authorities for changing speed limits. And Mega Map shows for that section that's under consideration between Te Rapa Road and Puketi Road, Mega Maps is showing that as 80 kilometres an hour as the safe and appropriate speed. The AA believes that this proposal does not stack up against the Hamilton City Council Speed Management Plan, which in that plan shows clearly that Wairere Drive in this location to be 80 kilometres an hour. The Hamilton City Council letter to the AA in the early consultation we had, dated 1 July, states the Hamilton SMP indicates that the current 80 kilometre per hour speed limit on Wairere Drive in the Te Rapa area will remain in place in the future, and this was reflective of the principles in the speed management plan. So when we look at the 4 priorities in the speed management plan, none of them appear to stack up when you look at this proposal. Priority 1 relates to high beneficial routes when developing maximum DSI savings. Now, it's already been shown that there is not a crash record, so it doesn't stack up against that priority. Second priority is a place where there is strong demand for change. And I'd suggest the 80% submissions opposing this are not suggesting a strong demand for change. Thirdly, a neighbourhood area, which this location is not. And the 4th priority in the speed management plan relates to lots of people walking and cycling, which I suggest was not really the case in this high volume trafficked area. So, Mr. Chairman, just my final point, and this is relating to the new intersection at Wairere Drive and Karewa Place. Now, while it has been clear that this is not part of this Local Government Act consultation proposal, we still believe it's relevant to comment on that because we do believe it will have significant impacts on the traffic flow in this location. We do oppose the new signalised intersection and the right-hand signalised turn into Karewa Place. The traffic modelling that was done as part of the resource consent application shows that there will be a delay of up to 16 seconds per vehicle for eastbound traffic on Wairere Drive. The OPIS safety audit that was done in March 2019 has found that the stacking of vehicles at these lights could potentially back right up to Te Rapa Road in peak times. So it's our view that congestion in this location, which is already highly congested in the peak, will significantly worsen as a result of a new intersection at that point. Our other concern is that this proposal will be channeling significant traffic down to Karewa Place, which is not designated as an arterial corridor. And as if anybody's been down in this location, you'll find that it's quite a narrow street, parking either side, and the BBO report that was done as part of the resource consent identified 400 vehicles per hour turning right into Kariwa Place. So what that will mean is significant extra traffic going down there. A recent discussion I had with a local business down there identified to me that there's already a long queue trying to get out and exiting left in the peak times from Kariwa Place, trying to get out onto Wairere Drive. And in fact, the OPA safety report noted that the queue at that point is likely to exceed 20 vehicles in the peak time trying to exit there. So, Mr. Chairman, just in conclusion, we're just, our reading, and we have had a read of the 781 submissions, is that the vast majority of 80% of submissions oppose the proposal. And these include major businesses in the area, such as Mitre 10, HMA New Zealand Limited, and the Stiles Family Trust, who have a property down in that location. So our view is, based on the significant opposition to the proposal and lack of compelling evidence for change, the fact that it doesn't stack up against the Hamilton City Speed Management Plan, we're asking that Hamilton City Council make the decision to retain the speed limit at 80 kilometres an hour. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you for your submission. Now, I have a few questions from my colleagues. First one is Councillor McPherson.
Thanks, Bill. I can't help seeing you in over 20 years in your regional council hat when you give presentations like this. So excuse me if I got that in the back of my mind. I was interested that the AA submission was primarily, apart from one sentence mentioned that I can recall, about cars or motorised vehicles, let's say, using Wairere Drive. Isn't it true that Wairere Drive, including in this area, has walking and cycling facilities, both at intersections and alongside the road?
Thank you, Councillor Dave. And yes, it's really good to see you again too, with a different hat on this time. Yes, look, I do. No, look, I do acknowledge, I think that there are, just from memory, I think there are cycleways in that location. I guess our view is that predominantly on a corridor of this nature, with heavy vehicles, light vehicles, and the function of moving a lot of traffic efficiently, cycling and walkway in this location is probably better on dedicated cycleways and walkways, probably to the side of the corridor, rather than trying to mix with the traffic within the corridor. But off the top of my head, I just can't quite recall if there is a dedicated cycleway along that corridor, but I think possibly there might be.
You're talking about the moving of heavy vehicles and that section of Wairere Drive doesn't double as a state highway, does it?
No, the state highway will go down on the other side through the new link near Arthur Porter onto the new expressway there.
Yeah.
But I think the fact of the Hamilton City bylaw, which tries to get that heavy vehicle out of the internal city network, I think the ring road is one way of trying to also get some of the heavier traffic that's perhaps delivering goods within Hamilton off the internal road through there.
But Wairere Drive itself is an internal road, isn't it? For instance, a key public transport corridor.
It is indeed, yes. I think probably one of the most important roads in the city, I would think.
And roads nowadays, are they not seen as, rather than the word road, transport corridor, to more accurately describe the different modes that can use the land space available?
Yes, absolutely. And I know on a lot of these corridors, I know Hamilton has done a lot of good work with cycle netways, and I think further to the east of Wairere Drive, I think alongside the bit from River Road right through to Hukanui. I think there's certainly, I'm aware of a very good cycle path along that part of it. So I think we certainly wouldn't want to discount in any way the important role of walking and cycling on any of the city transport corridors. I guess what we are just saying in this particular location and this strategic corridor for the city, when you look at the function of that road, that movement of vehicles is quite a high priority for the city.
So just thinking about the AA's policy strategy, are you nowadays advocating for good cycling and walking and good and safe cycling and walking facilities, as well as for good motorised vehicle facilities? I'm speaking as an AA member myself for 40-something years. I would certainly hope you are, but I'm not sure what the official stance of the AA is.
Yes, no, look, I believe, Councillor Dave, that is the case. I'm reasonably new to the AA, just haven't been on a local council here for just over a year. But I think what I read from the National Office is that the AA has moved significantly towards supporting public transport, walking and cycling, and all modes of transport to achieve the best outcome for transport as a whole.
All right, Councillor Dave, we've gone way beyond time, so I've
it was
still
so
got
interesting transport discussions. I'm sorry, Mr. Chair.
It's all right. If I had a mute button, I would have muted you already.
That's why we took it away from you. Sorry.
Actually, Narelle, could you give me that button back? Councillor Mark, and then we have to move on. You're on mute.
Thank you, and sorry to interrupt your discussion, Dave. Bill, thank you very much. It was really a good submission. But I'm wondering, in your experience, you were talking about the queues, and I've been caught in those too down Karewa Place onto Wairere, especially at peak times, and they are abominable. In your experience, do controlled intersections actually alleviate those queues, or do they exacerbate them? Could they be used to keep them flowing a bit better?
Yes, good point there, Councillor Mark. I think I have had a good read of the transport assessment documents that have been prepared for that resource consent, and there's been a lot of detailed technical work done looking at the modelling and what might occur. I think it potentially signals will help. I think one of the proposals in the Opus report talks about potentially having yellow hatched markings on Wairere Drive to keep the traffic away from the signals to allow that traffic to get out. So potentially it might help, but I think the quantum and the volume of cars trying to get out of there in the peak time will still be large. And I think that will be the issue, I think, trying to channel the number of vehicles out of there.
Cool. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Bill. Thanks for your submission. Thanks, Councillor Mark. Now, the next submission is from Mr. Gudgeon. Kia ora, and a very warm welcome. You have 5 minutes. If you could focus on your salient points and just leave a few minutes for questions. You can see from what we've just had is a number of councillors often have a number of questions.
Sure.
A very warm welcome. You've got the floor, Mr. Gudgeon.
Thank you. This is the first time I've put in a submission, and when I saw this through social media, I wasn't sure whether it would make a difference. Well, I mean, what I've got to say. I live here in Puketi, but I thought I'd say something anyway. At present, firstly, I'm opposed to the new traffic lights. I live here in Puketi, just off Puketi Road. I live right next to Te Rapa Primary School, and so Wairere Drive, the traffic lights there with Puketi Road, I use that very regularly. My experience at present is that it's a nightmare trying to get from Pukete, this side of Pukete, through the other side of Wairere Drive. Mostly when you're trying to get through Wairere Drive traffic lights, the most cars that you get through on one time is 3. So if you're 7 cars back, and you'll get 7 cars back in the middle of the day without there being any peak traffic, you're going to be waiting there for at least 2 sets of, what'll be 1, 2. You'll be waiting for 2 red lights before you actually get out there. So I'm not sure how long that takes. It's normally a couple of minutes of each change. In the peak times, you can be waiting there for 5. You can be waiting there for 5 traffic lights. I've wondered why, who does the, I guess there's engineers that do the timing of that, but it's, at the moment, it's terrible. And every single set of traffic lights I see, I see cars that are going through the red lights because they're tired of waiting. Just last week, and the effect of that last year, down at the Tarapa Road, Pukete Road's traffic lights, I was first on the scene to an accident of a truck that had just gone straight, coming from Tarapa Road, heading north on Tarapa Road, turning right into Pukete Road. I saw 2 trucks go straight through the traffic lights because they're tired of waiting. And car that was southbound on Tarapa Straight got hit side on, right on the B pillar of the vehicle. So able to help them out there. And the guy that caused the accident, of course, he was apologetic, but he was doing it. Just last week, I was coming through the traffic lights on Wairere Drive and Tarapa Road from the overbridge, and I had to stop for a truck that was turning right into Tarapa Road, heading north. And he went through traffic lights, a red traffic light, and as I went to proceed, a bus followed the truck that had already gone through a red traffic light. And I'm seeing this all of the time. My concern is that adding another set of traffic lights there is going to congest it more. You're going to have more people doing this, and there's going to be a lot more accidents. I don't have any scientific proof for this, but this is just my experience on a day-to-day basis, and that's not even in peak hour time. And so I'm opposed to it for that fact. I don't know the studies, and I don't know how you do your algorithms to figure out how it works, but at present it's not working. So why would it get any better by adding another set of lights there? So that's all I had to say, really.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for submitting. We really appreciate our community engaging with us. This is how we get to hear from our community. So thank you. You make a difference by talking to us. Colleagues, I open it up for any questions. I don't see any. So I thank you again. I really appreciate the submission today.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Mr. Goodgen. Right, next one I have on my list is Mr. Mudford. Raymond, welcome again. You're in the flowers today. I much prefer that backdrop than the food you had. However, it appears that you're back on your helium. So we're going to have to wean you from the helium. Okay, so I think what I'm going to do here is
Raymond, I'll just check. Raymond, I think last time this was occurring, your volume was right up, or your sort of speaker was very high. Maybe if you tried turning it down. If not, maybe you'll need to leave and rejoin.
That's how it sounds on the phone too.
Right. Okay. Narelle, do we have anybody else in the waiting room?
No, so Raymond is our last speaker. Jason has withdrawn.
Raymond, could I suggest that you leave the meeting and then you rejoin, turn the volume down. So it won't be a few moments, and we'll have Raymond join us again.
Oh gosh, I missed it last time that happened. So
Once you start having helium, it's hard to break yourself from it.
We've never had that before, eh? That sound.
No, but
Apart from with Raymond.
it keeps getting funnier every time.
If I thought you were saying you'd never had helium, the helium before.
Oh, I've never had come across that happening on anybody else. So, oh, here he is.
No.
Here he is. He's got food back.
see.
Raymond, I'm hoping you're sounding more human than chipmunk.
Hello.
Much better.
Interesting. I don't have this problem with anyone else that I communicate with, so I don't know what that message means.
Council plot.
Well, I certainly won't take it personally. Raymond,
No,
welcome. We have you down for 5 minutes. Salient points, please, and then we'll open it up for questions. You have the floor.
Right. My concern with this particular proposal is that it's tinkering, and it doesn't appear to be if you call it a solid transport strategy in terms of how this initiative is actually going to improve the way in which we transport ourselves around the city. You'll see that at the end of my proposal, I'm suggesting that what we actually need is an integrated transport plan. And with that, we can then understand how the various modes of transport are going to safely move from one corridor to the next. I guess the skeptic says that this set of lights on Werribee Drive is all about a particular commercial operator wanting a better access to their product by Hamiltonians than by the current methodology. I'm not sure that's actually correct, and I think all it's going to do is cause more chaos on Werribee Drive. Sometimes I am stupid enough to actually go from the base back home, which involves going down Werribee Drive between 2:30 and 4 o'clock. And on many occasions, not so much during COVID, but certainly during normal traffic times, everything is at a standstill, even right back at times to Giraffe Road. And I cannot possibly see how satellites can improve that. So my appeal is actually for an integrated transport plan that we as both the community, elected members and staff can sit down and work out what are the major corridors, what are the transport options that we need on those major corridors, and how we link the major corridors together. At the moment, it appears that our approach is the 1960s, where you can take any road to anywhere. And that probably isn't appropriate today. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Raymond. Let's see what questions we have. I'm not seeing any questions currently. Yes, no, Councillor Mark.
Thank you. G'day, Ray. Good to see you. When you say in your submission, we oppose, are you talking about your family, or are you representing the group? Or?
It's a wider group, Mark. There's a number of us talking around the community, from people such as Endley to people in Rotatuna, to Chartwell, to Beta. We're not an organised group. We don't call ourselves anything, but we talk amongst each others, and we care about our community, and we want to see things improve from where they are currently. And this is our option to express that.
Thank you, Ray. Appreciate it, mate.
Thanks, Ray. There are no further questions. Thank you very much. Every submission is helpful for us to form a view and to understand the feelings in the community. So thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on now, we're really at the time to staff are seeking direction from us if there's anything else you believe should be included, and we can open this up to questions and your views. Well, not your views, just any additional information you require. So Councillor Ryan, go ahead.
Thanks, Chair. Look, guide me if I'm sort of off track. I guess it was prompted by the chat that spoke from Puketi around the light algorithms. Robin, I'm wondering if this is part of the scope that you'll bring back. But I've noticed that too, turning right into Wairere Drive when you're facing north, that often you wait a set of lights, the arrow comes on, it lets 2 or 3 cars through, and then you've got 2 or 3 cars that go through an orange red time after time after time. So I'm just wondering, are you able to provide some insight into the algorithms there? Do we have red light traffic cameras up there? Are we at risk of exacerbating this? I appreciate this is slightly broader than the traffic reduction piece, but obviously interrelated into that wider conversation. So sorry, I'm sort of in your hands, Ewan and Robin, as to whether I'm in scope or not. I'm just.
I think you're dancing on the edges of the envelope, but I'm happy for Robin to answer your direct question regarding the traffic light algorithm if she can. If not, I wonder, Robin, if you would mind making a note and getting back to Councillor Ryan regarding the points that he raised. If you don't believe it's actually subject to the feedback you need for the deliberations report.
So I'm happy to answer. I don't think it has a direct impact on the speed limit decision. But for the light phasing, what I would suggest is it is a science with a little bit of art mixed into it as well. It is very much focused on keeping the key arterials working. What I would offer you, councillor, and any other councillors is we actually set up a bit of a session with John Kinghorn so he can actually take you through and explain how they manage the signals on a daily basis and how those phasings work. Your second question was with regard to red light cameras, and no, we don't have any in the city. There is legislative work going through at the moment, which is looking to move the operation and ownership of safety cameras, which includes speed cameras, red light cameras, and the combination red light speed cameras from New Zealand Police through to Waka Kotahi. So that piece of work's underway at the moment, and I understand that that'll be a year or two away before that gets landed, and then they'll be looking again at what opportunities there are to roll out more.
Thanks. Thanks.
Does that help, Councillor Ryan?
Yeah, I think any further questions I'm going to be dancing too broadly, so I'll leave it there.
Although we always enjoy seeing you dancing, I think that's probably wise. Councillor Mark.
Yeah, thank you.
Or are you Mark 1? You're Mark 1, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm Mark 1. Well, I'm just old. Just call me Bunty, whatever you want to call me. That's absolutely fine. Robin, I might have lost track of where this discussion was going, but with regards the potential of raised platforms at Puketi in conjunction with this, is this still a part of that equation in the end, or?
No. So where we got to with that was determining that there wasn't a need to do any additional physical works beyond that which is required in the resource consent at this stage, because the speeds are low enough with the average or mean speed being at that 66 k's. There's not a need for us to do any additional work to reinforce a lower speed limit.
Okay, so that's not necessarily okay. Thank you. And regards a right-hand slip lane, is that still a part of the equation if there was to be an intersection there coming west on Wairere?
So it's a right. So just to make sure I get this right. So the proposal as part of the resource consent is to put a partial set of traffic signals in at Kawera Place. Is that where you're trying to clarify,
Yes,
Councillor Mark? Yeah. Okay. And so the partial set of traffic signals would allow for westbound, so heading from the river to the base.
Yep.
Traffic to get a traffic signal controlled right turn into Kawera Place. It would also, but it does not allow for a right turn out of Kawera Place. So that's the partial component of it.
Got it.
Does
So
that make sense?
Yes, it
Sorry,
does.
can't
Yeah,
wave my arms around enough at home.
That's fine. And so there would be corresponding signals coming eastwards as well, I think, on the east line.
Correct. That they'll stop, the straight through traffic would stop so that right turn could happen safely. Yes.
Okay, thank you. No, thanks, Chair Ewan.
Pleasure. So I've got Councillor Rob, followed by Councillor Kesh, and then followed by Councillor Maxine.
Thank you, Chair Ewan. Robin, in the deliberations report, as I visualise it, it's about a 500-metre stretch of road from Te Rapa intersection to the Puketi intersection.
In that order, yep.
Roughly about
yes.
right. And what will happen if the traffic signals go in at Kawera Place? There will be 3 sets of traffic lights in that 500-metre space. I just wonder if we've got any other areas in the city where we have got lights, 3 sets of lights in 500 metres, and if where the permitted maximum speed is, let's say 60 k's an hour. I just wonder if we're able to find out whether we've got that and how we manage that in terms of effectiveness, efficiency, what sort of accident rates we have, just so that we've got, if you like, we've already got a test. We've already got a tester that's actually working in the city.
Yep.
Or indeed, if there's somewhere, some other city that has that same configuration.
Yep.
Just to set at ease the concerns that the 60k speed limit will have in terms of efficiently moving traffic up that corridor, because I know it is a very, very busy corridor. I use it quite a bit myself. And it is there for that, as many of the submitters have said. It's there for that particular reason. It's a arterial corridor for moving cars around the outside of the city.
Yes, no, I can certainly do that for you and include something in the report.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Chair.
No problem. Councillor Kesh.
Thank
Nice
you.
to see you.
Yeah, and you. Thank you. Just Robin or someone who can answer. During the LTP process, I remember reading something about a project to expand Wairere Drive to 4 lanes, I think it said. Does that ring any bells, or is that in the pipeline for the future, or is it unfunded? Does anyone know?
Is Chris Allen on the call still? I know that he needed to go at one stage. Yep. Thank you, Chris.
So towards the end of the 10-year plan, Councillor Kesh, we have continually put up a program for the Wairere Drive 4 laning, but it's at the eastern end around Crosby Lane, sort of from Resolution Drive through to the Crosby Road. So it's certainly not hadn't been in anyone's intent to widen, this part of the 4 lanes, this part of Wairere Drive beyond the 4 lanes. So its future will just be optimising the use of the traffic lanes we've got there, not widening. Yeah. So it's potentially to widen the 2-lane sections of Wairere Drive towards the east.
Thank you, Chris. That makes sense. And so if this were to go ahead, and we've heard about how traffic is backed up in the afternoons, especially. I mean, if you're trying to get from the base to Flagstaff or Rotatuna in the evening, it's going to take a long time. So if this were to happen, will that project be reprioritized, or what would the flow-on effect be to? My question is really about, are we creating more of a problem than fixing a problem?
Yeah, I don't think there's a direct linkage between this issue and the future four-laning of the ring road towards the SNN. So I don't think there is a direct linkage, if that was your question.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Cash. Councillor Maxine.
Oh, thank you. And I guess my question is quite aligned with that of Councillor Pesco in terms of the congestion and the impact on that part of the corridor. The great majority of submitters who are opposed to the change talk about additional travel time and the impact that a lower speed limit will have on their journey. And I wonder what strategies we've got available that would allow at some of those peak times traffic to flow more easily rather than a stop-start at each of those individual lights, that there's the ability to potentially phase it so that a good stream of traffic can go through. And I wonder if your report can highlight how that can happen and the time saving that can be made per journey, rather than it being seen potentially as a negative and a hold up for traffic. Thank you.
So,
that's yeah.
Yep. So certainly happy to investigate that. I guess at the end of the day, there is a limit to how much we can do with phasing. At some stage, we need to stop traffic and allow it to come in from other side roads and that sort of thing. And when we're at absolute peak congestion, then it's just a matter of trying to keep things moving so we don't end up in a gridlock situation. There are times, extreme times, such as Boxing Day sales and that sort of thing, where the traffic through to the base is extreme. And we do have stationary traffic for long periods of time. And so that, I think, is the reality of the network that we currently have out there. The time lost with the lower speed limit, based on the travel speeds that we've got going through there at the moment, which are showing around that 66 k's, there's actually going to be very minimal delays caused by the lower speed limit. There may be some more delays caused if you happen to hit a red traffic signal at Kawera.
Okay, thank you, Robin. That's really helpful.
All right, thank you. I've got Councillor Sarah and then Mayor Paula.
Thank you. And thanks, Robin. You've addressed the issue, the question around how much the speed limit would impact on travel time, but a number of submitters said it would cause congestion. Could we get some kind of a comment around whether reducing a speed negatively impacts traffic flow or / congestion?
Yes, I think we can get something on that. I think the reality is every location is different, and it has to do with what's happening, side roads and bits and pieces like that. And I guess the higher speed limit doesn't automatically relate to better flow either. Often a lower speed limit will have better flow, but I will see what I can find that's applicable to this location.
Thank you. Yeah, it was just a reoccurring theme in the written submission.
Thank you. Mayor Paula.
Thank you. I am mute. I'm not muted, aren't I? Thank you.
We can hear you.
Thank you. Good. I hope I haven't missed this. I have been listening. I had a few distractions, but in terms of the intersection, Robin, we've had this discussion before. The one that comes out of Hairfield near the River Road Wairere intersection.
Yes.
At one stage, there's an upgrade. It's just a slip, sort of a wide slip lane of sorts. Sorry if I'm not using the right word, but I know that there was one time an intention, if it hits a certain threshold, to get to a lighted solution. It is, of course, very close to another set of lights. What's the trigger point for that River Road? Because it was already at capacity. Are there any things we should be aware of in that particular intersection, which is like mad crazy twice a day?
So you're specifically asking about Hairfield River intersection?
Yeah. How it
Yeah.
has, because what happens is that people turn right from Hairfield and then they clog up the straight route through River Road, and it all compounds that whole issue at peak time. Where's that sitting now? Since we haven't talked about it for probably about 2 years, I think.
So I'm not aware of any additional work being planned or proposed there. When we did River Road, I thought that the upgrade basically had dealt with that. I know that we've looked at the bridge just south of there, so the Kirikiriroa Stream Bridge, which is a real tight or pinch point for not only cars, but particularly walking and cycling. And so we're having a look at what we can do for walking and cycling in that area. But as far as the Hairfield intersection, I'm not aware of any work.
Okay, I know it was sort of pushed out, but I'm just wondering, because you get greater levels of infill, it's just pertinent to a conversation we had earlier about traffic now accessing Wairere more infill, and when the capacity becomes, when it's just not. Do you understand what I'm saying, don't you, Chris? Eventually, it's going to be impossible to turn right one way at one time of day and right the other time, the other way, other end of day.
Yep, I guess welcome to congestion and intensification, and I guess that's why we've got a broader traffic transport strategy, which is looking at public transport and walking and cycling. So these issues they're here now, and they're just going to get worse, and that's why it is really important to have that broader approach and how we move people around.
Yeah. I was just wondering, because there'll be a lot of other areas potentially within Flagstaff and etc., and that will put more pressure potentially on the intersections in particular, because once they're going this way or this way, they might not be moving fast, but they're going.
Yes.
Mayor Paul, we're just walking a little close to whether or not that's on point for this particular.
Well, it is, because I'm talking about the compounding pressure on the Wairere network. That's all. I'm trying to understand that, because every traffic that now has to access Wairere becomes part of the pressure on that network. That's all. But anyway, I think that's fine. I'll leave it there for now. Thanks. It could be picked up in the Access Hamilton rework, couldn't it, Chris?
Yeah, absolutely. It's been picked up now, and a lot of work the transport team is doing in mode shift, and certainly in Access Hamilton strategy, but also Metro spatial plan and the rapid transport networks PT plan. So the broader strategy is working pretty hard to manage that as best as possible.
Thanks. All right. Thank you.
Right.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Deputy Chair Mark.
Thanks, Chairman. Thank you, Robin, for a good report too. It's excellent, good feedback and submissions and whatnot. But my question, and I may have overlooked it in the report, I'm not sure, but have we given any consideration to what people's driving habits are like when they come off an 80 into a 60 zone? Is that relevant, and vice versa when they go from 60 back up to 80? Because I mean, I know from my own experience of traveling that road, back in the days of driving from Rototuna to the chocolate factory, people would race those, often race those lights at Puketi to get through. And I'm just wondering, if they're hitting 60 and it's already slowing up, what considerations do we give to, I guess, is it safety? And I don't know if that question is relevant. It's just something was ticking over in my mind.
Yeah. So I guess the big thing is, if we were to lower the speed limit, then making sure that we have good, clear signage for that speed limit change. And that could be signage, your typical road signage, but also the marking of the 60k onto the road pavement, just to raise awareness of that, because that's really effective too, because that's where most drivers are sort of looking, is that directly in front of them on the road. So I think that will be the key component if there's a decision made to change the speed limit, making sure that we've got that clearly signposted and marked.
Yeah, fair call. I think with the added piece around, right turn up ahead or something like that when you're travelling west on Wairere as well, because you can see what's going to happen. People are going to race across that intersection, to try and get into Kariwa.
So the design will have to obviously cater for the right turn and the right turns that are already in place into Te Rapa, that little bit further along, and making sure the design takes care of that. And that will be part of a safety audit process that it would be undertaken if that design was to proceed.
Cool. Thank you for the clarification. Thanks.
Sorry, everybody, I did it myself. I was Councillor Ryan, excuse me.
Thanks, Chair. Just a quick one, Robin, and it wasn't one of the submissions I saw. Is it, if there was a halfway house reduction to 70 kilometres, would that satisfy traffic modelling, or are we still in the same boat?
So currently 70 kilometres an hour is a speed limit that is being phased out across the country. So it's seen as only being applicable when it's a step from a higher speed limit through to a planned lower speed limit, and suitable for addressing perhaps where you've got some safety concerns but haven't got the ability to get in and do the physical works needed just yet. But long term, it's not seen as being a speed limit that's going to be available for use.
Thank you.
Right, I've got Councillor Mark.
Thank you.
Again.
And, I know. It's just, once is never enough, and I promise this is the last one. Robin, hey, do a common thread that came through, because this is about is a speed limit change. A common thread that came through, even amongst those who were opposed to it, was that I never get up to 80 k's anyway. Do we have, because it is so congested, etc., and sort of in the spirit of Leo Tuman, do we have any data on how many do actually get up to 80 k's at, over a 24-hour period? I've granted sort of late at night, but I'm actually just wondering, how much of a material difference will it really make to people's lives? Just the speed limit change, not necessarily the lights. So do we have any modelling on that?
So we have actual count data, and yes, we did have a good look at that, and even at night, the speeds are generally, people are not getting up to that 80k. So that was one of the things I was particularly interested in. I can understand during the day that, that other congestion, etc., was managing the speeds down. The question I did have was whether at night, when there was less congestion, as to whether the speeds were sitting more generally around that 80k. And the answer was that no, it wasn't. The counts that we had completed. So that's where we ended up with the sort of average mean being 66 k's, and being comfortable that we didn't therefore need to do additional physical works at Puketi in order to reinforce that lower speed limit.
And the length of the distance, so this also goes over the rail bridge, doesn't it? Over down to about Four Guys.
Yes,
right?
That's correct. Yes. Yes.
And the reason for that over that side of Te Rapa Road?
So the guidance in the speed limits rule is that if you're going to put in a 60k speed limit, then you should have at least 600 metres of that. So the distance that we've got between those two intersections, I think, is about 410 metres. And actually, when you look at the environment that goes up and over that rail bridge, it's actually narrower, and it kind of makes sense. And it also means that you don't end up then with a short section of 80 going into a short section of 60, going back to a short section of, to the longer section of 80, sorry, if we're heading east towards the river. So that's why we've incorporated that other section, because it actually does make more sense to have the whole section as a 60 rather than just the short section between the two intersections.
Consistency. Okay, thank you. Thanks. That's it for me. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Sarah.
One more, thank you, Chair Ewan. It was Mark just jogged my memory. Robin, you'd mentioned previously that eventually we may look at having 60k as a consistent thing on Wairere, and I also recall Waka Kotahi had been looking at making Common Drive area 60, which I think is kind of part of, not so much part of it, but is it part of the ring road? Yeah, it kind of is. So I'm just wondering, what could we get more information around what likely changes would happen on the rest of the network? Is that relevant? I'm just thinking in terms of, or is it going too broad around looking at the wider network?
I can certainly look at that. What I would say is that we always have, for these sorts of roads, we have two choices. And generally the reason why we're looking to lower the speed limit is for safety concerns. And so you've got the choice of either improving the network or lowering the speed limit. And it may be that sometimes when you lower the speed limit, you have to do some other work as well. There are various speed limits on the ring road network. So if we think of the ring road as being the sort of Wairie across the top, down the eastern side, and then that Cobham and existing State Highway 1 at the moment, that does have a variety of speed limits along it. And that's generally reflective of the nature of the road, where it's, Greenwood Street, for example, has a section that's 60k and has a lot of activity coming out on it. Other parts are higher limits. So it does, the ring road itself, that network does have varying speed limits on it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Sarah. So that looks like we've brought to an end the questions. Now, what I thought I might do now is just remind us, item 4, the recommendation that we're about to move is on page 5, and that is to receive the report. We've heard the public submissions and those written submissions, and that we now move this on to the Operations Committee, 7th of December. Can I have a mover for this? Wonderful. So Deputy Chair Mark moves and Mark 1 seconds. That makes it nice and straightforward. Let's open it up for debate, if there is any debate. No debate. I'll put all those in favour, raise your hands. Those against. Now I see Councillor McPherson is in there. Councillor Dave, are you in earshot? So sorry, we just put the vote, and so he's up as well. So I'll leave you to call it now, Narelle.
Okay, great. So the motion is carried unanimously.
Wonderful. All right. Well, I think that brings the meeting today to an end. I wouldn't mind just having a brief chat